The Great Hall of the Galactic Council Station was bigger than most cities. 12 different alien species sat in their special chairs, each one built for their unique bodies. The air smelled of strange gases that each species needed to breathe. Translator machines buzzed quietly, turning every word into sounds that all species could understand. Captain Lee Do-hyun walked into the hall wearing his simple blue Earth uniform. Behind him came Dr. Park Min-ji, carrying a heavy datapad filled with research. Ambassador Kang Hyun-woo followed last, his face serious and tired. The humans were the newest members of the council. They had only joined 5 years ago. The other aliens barely looked at them. The Zephyrians were tall lizard-like creatures with sharp teeth and cold yellow eyes. Their leader, High Counselor Vextar, sat on the highest chair. His scales were dark green and covered in old battle scars. He had ruled the council for over 300 years. Next to him sat Commander Kixlan from the hive mind species. She looked like a giant insect with 4 arms and black eyes that never blinked. Her people shared one mind across billions of bodies. When she spoke for all of them. The other species filled the remaining seats. There were the floating gas beings from Nebula Prime, the rock people from the heavy gravity worlds, and the cyber-enhanced machine minds from the Outer Rim. Each one was millions of years older than human civilization. High Counselor Vextar struck his staff against the metal floor. The sound rang through the hall like a bell. "This emergency meeting will begin," he said in his deep, cold voice. "We are here because of strange energy readings from the galaxy's edge. Some ships have detected unusual signals." Captain Do-hyun stood up. His heart was beating fast, but his voice stayed calm. "Honorable council members, we have studied these signals. They are not natural. They match ancient warnings found on dozens of worlds." A sound like laughter came from the hive mind section. Commander Kixlan's mandibles clicked together. "The young humans think they understand galactic history better than us." "How amusing." Dr. Park Min-ji stepped forward. She activated her datapad, and holographic images filled the air above the council. Ancient stone tablets, metal recordings, and crystal memory banks appeared. These warnings come from civilizations that lived millions of years ago. They all tell the same story. Something called the Sleepers once nearly destroyed all life in the galaxy. The images showed the same symbols appearing on worlds thousands of light years apart. Worlds that had never met each other. The symbols always meant the same thing: danger, death, and something that came from the dark between stars. "Look at the patterns," Dr. Park Min-ji continued. "These civilizations lived at different times. Some died out before others were even born, but they all left the same warnings. They all feared the same enemy." High Counselor Vextar's yellow eyes narrowed. "Myths and legends, nothing more. Young species always believe in fairy tales. We have real science. We have lived for millions of years. We know what is real and what is not." The floating beings from Nebula Prime made sounds like wind through metal. Their translator spoke for them. "Humans have been in space for less than 500 years. How can they know more than beings who have traveled the stars for eons?" Ambassador Kang Hyun-woo tried to keep his temper under control. "With respect, honored being, sometimes new eyes can see what old ones cannot. We have studied your own historical records. Even your ancient texts mention a time of great darkness, a time when civilizations vanished without trace." "Coincidence," said the Rock People's representative. His voice sounded like grinding stone. "Civilizations die from war, disease, and natural disasters, not from sleeping monsters." Captain Do-hyun activated another set of images. These showed star maps with dark areas where no life existed. These dead zones exist throughout the galaxy. Regions where no civilization has ever developed. Where even basic life forms are rare. The pattern matches the ancient warnings exactly. Commander Kixlan stood up on her 6 legs. "The hive mind has memories going back 10 million years. We remember no great enemy, no sleeping destroyers, only the natural rise and fall of civilizations. But what if those memories were altered?" Dr. Park Min-ji asked quietly. "What if surviving this enemy required forgetting about it?" The hall fell silent for a moment. Then High Counselor Vextar began to laugh. It was a cold, cruel sound. "Now the humans suggest we have false memories. That we, the eldest and wisest beings in the galaxy, have been fooled by our own minds." Other council members joined the laughter. The cyber minds made electronic sounds that meant amusement. The gas beings swirled faster in their containers. Even the serious rock people made grinding noises that served as chuckles. "The energy signatures are getting stronger," Captain Do-hyun said, raising his voice above the laughter. They are moving toward inhabited systems. We estimate 72 hours before they reach populated worlds. Then we will send exploration ships to investigate, High Counselor Vextar said, waving one clawed hand. We will discover what these energy sources really are. Probably ancient technology or unusual stellar phenomena. Nothing more. And if you are wrong? Ambassador Kang Hyunwoo asked. If the warnings are real? If something terrible is waking up? High Counselor Vextar's eyes glowed brighter. Then we will deal with it using our advanced technology and millions of years of experience. We do not need human fairy tales to guide us. The Council voted. 11 species voted to ignore the human warnings and send standard exploration teams to investigate. Only the humans voted for immediate military preparation and evacuation of worlds near the energy sources. As the meeting ended, the aliens filed out of the hall, talking and laughing among themselves. Many made jokes about human fears and primitive thinking. The humans were left standing alone in the vast empty space. Dr. Park Minji looked at the data still floating above her pad. Ancient symbols that meant danger. Ancient words that screamed warnings across millions of years. They think we are children afraid of monsters in the dark, she said quietly. Maybe we are, Captain Do-Hyun replied. But what if the monsters are real? Ambassador Kang Hyunwoo's communication device buzzed. A message from Earth Fleet Command appeared on the screen. His face went pale as he read it. What is it? Captain Do-Hyun asked. Ambassador Kang slowly turned the device so they could see. The message was short and simple. They're moving. ETA to inhabited systems 72 hours. All fleets moving to defensive positions. Prepare for the worst. In the empty council hall, 3 humans stood alone with their fears and their knowledge. Outside the great windows, stars shone peacefully in the darkness. But somewhere out there, in the space between galaxies, something ancient was stirring. Something that had slept for millions of years was finally waking up. The warnings had been ignored. The laughter had drowned out the voices of the dead. But the humans knew the truth that the galaxy was about to learn. Sometimes the monsters in the dark are real. The Altair system had been peaceful for over 1,000 years. 5 beautiful planets orbited the bright yellow star, and 3 of them were home to the crystalline collective. These beings looked like living crystals that sang to each other with sounds like wind chimes. They had never known war. They had never known fear. Admiral Song Ji-won watched the peaceful system through the main screen of her flagship, the Soul's Pride. Her human fleet hung at the edge of the system, hidden behind a small moon. They were supposed to be heading back to Earth, following orders from the Galactic Council. But Admiral Song had other ideas. Ma'am, we're picking up something big coming out of hyperspace, said Lieutenant Commander Cho Soon-ho from his position at the tactical station. He was young for his rank, but his eyes were sharp and his hands were steady. It's massive. Bigger than anything in our databases. The main screen changed to show a shape emerging from the darkness between stars. It was not like any ship anyone had ever seen. It was black, so black that it seemed to eat light itself. The hull was smooth in some places and covered with strange patterns in others. It was longer than Earth's largest space station and twice as wide. Chief Engineer Kim Nari, are you seeing this? Admiral Song asked into her communication device. Kim Nari's voice came back from the engine room, filled with excitement and fear. Admiral, that thing is putting out energy readings I've never seen before. It's not using any known propulsion system. It's like it's bending space around itself. The ancient vessel moved slowly toward the inner planets where the crystalline collective lived. It made no sound, sent no messages, and responded to no attempts at communication. It simply moved with the steady purpose of a predator approaching its prey. The crystalline collective noticed the visitor and did what they always did when meeting new beings. They sent out their finest diplomatic ship, the Harmony Song. It was beautiful, made of living crystal that pulsed with soft rainbow colors. The ship sang as it moved, creating music that could be heard across space. They're trying to make contact, Lieutenant Commander Cho reported. The crystalline ship is broadcasting friendship songs and welcome messages in 200 different languages. Admiral Song felt ice form in her stomach. The ancient warnings had mentioned something about first contact with the sleepers. None of those stories had happy endings. The Harmony Song approached the dark vessel with its lights flashing in patterns of peace and joy. The crystal beings aboard were probably singing their most beautiful welcome songs, preparing gifts of art and music to share with the mysterious visitors. The response came without warning. A beam of pure energy shot from the ancient vessel. But this was not like any weapon the humans had ever seen. Where the beam touched the crystalline ship, matter simply stopped existing. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but completely removed from reality, as if it had never been there at all. The Harmony's song died without even having time to scream. "Dear God," whispered Lieutenant Commander Cho. His face was white with shock, but the ancient vessel was not finished. It turned toward the nearest planet, home to billions of crystal beings. More beams shot from its hull. Wherever they touched the surface, entire cities vanished. Not blown up, not melted, but completely erased as if they had never existed. Admiral Song watched in horror as a peaceful civilization was being systematically deleted from existence. "All sensors on that ship," she ordered. "I want to know everything about how it works." Chief Engineer Kim Nari's voice came over the communication system, shaking with disbelief. "Admiral, you need to hear this. That weapon. It's using principles from our quantum dissolution research. The theoretical work that other species said was impossible." "What do you mean?" Admiral Song asked. "We've been working on weapons that attack matter at the quantum level for 20 years, Kim Nari explained. "The other species laughed at our theories. They said such weapons couldn't exist, but that ancient ship is using exactly those principles, only 1,000 times more advanced." Lieutenant Commander Cho was monitoring the battle, if it could be called a battle. It was more like watching a gardener pull weeds. The crystalline collective is trying to evacuate their populations, but that ship is too fast. It's systematically hitting every population center, every orbital station, every outpost. "Any survivors?" Admiral Song asked, though she already knew the answer. "No, ma'am. Where those beams hit, there's nothing left. Not even debris. It's like those places never existed at all." Emergency signals began flooding the galactic communication networks. Other alien fleets were reporting the same thing happening in their sectors. The peaceful Botanical Confederation in the Vega system, gone. The ancient library worlds of the Sigma sector, erased. The industrial colonies of the Silicon Brotherhood, deleted from existence. "How many ships are there?" Admiral Song asked. "At least 4 confirmed, ma'am," Lieutenant Commander Cho replied. "Possibly more. Each one is systematically destroying entire civilizations." The communication system crackled with panicked messages from across the galaxy. Alien species that had lived for millions of years were screaming in terror. The proud Zephyrians were calling for help. The collective mind of the hive species was breaking apart under the stress of losing entire worlds. "Ma'am, we're receiving direct orders from Earth Fleet Command," the communications officer reported. "All human ships are ordered to return to Sol system immediately for defensive positions." Admiral Song looked at the main screen. The ancient vessel had finished with the 3rd planet and was moving toward the 4th. Soon every trace of the crystalline collective would be gone. 1,000 years of art, music, and peaceful civilization would be erased as if it had never existed. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Commander Cho asked quietly. "Your orders?" Admiral Song was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the Galactic Council and their laughter when the humans tried to warn them. She thought about High Counselor, Vextar calling human fears fairy tales. She thought about the ancient warnings that everyone had ignored. "Chief Engineer Kim Nari," she said into her communication device. "How long would it take to prepare our experimental weapons?" "Our quantum dissolution torpedoes?" "About 30 minutes, ma'am. But they've never been tested in real combat." "And our chances against that ancient ship?" Kim Nari was quiet for a moment. "Unknown, ma'am. But if our theories are right, we might be the only ones in the galaxy with weapons that can actually hurt it." Lieutenant Commander Cho looked up from his station. "Admiral, more alien fleets are arriving in nearby systems. They're all running away from similar ships." Admiral Song watched the ancient vessel continue its methodical destruction. The other alien species were fleeing in panic, their advanced technology useless against an enemy that could simply delete matter from existence. But humans had spent centuries preparing for enemies with superior technology. They had developed weapons specifically designed to fight opponents they couldn't match in conventional ways. "Signal the fleet," Admiral Song commanded. "We're not retreating. We're going to test our weapons against that thing." "Ma'am," Lieutenant Commander Cho sounded shocked. "We're heavily outnumbered and outgunned." "Yes," Admiral Song replied, watching the last crystalline cities vanish from existence. "But we're also the only ones crazy enough to fight back." The ancient vessel finished destroying the fourth planet and began moving toward the fifth. It had been systematic, thorough, and completely merciless. In less than 2 hours, it had erased an entire civilization from existence. But for the first time in millions of years, something was about to fight back. The human fleet powered up their experimental weapons and moved toward their first encounter with the sleepers. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when humanity refused to run away. Dr. Ryu Tai-hyun worked alone in the deep archives beneath Earth's capital city. Around him, millions of files and artifacts filled endless shelves that stretched up into darkness. He had been here for 3 days without sleep, searching through ancient records while the galaxy burned above him. His hands shook as he pulled out another crystal storage device from the old Martian colonies. The first human settlements had found these crystals in deep caves, covered with symbols no one could read. For 200 years they had sat in storage, forgotten and ignored. But now Dr. Ryu could read them. "Computer, translate the symbols using the new linguistic patterns," he said to the archive's artificial intelligence. The crystal began to glow, and holographic text appeared in the air. Dr. Ryu's blood turned cold as he read the words. The gardeners return every 50 million years. They clear the weeds. They harvest the worthy. They plant new seeds. This is the 13th cycle. We were not worthy. We were cleared. Remember us. Dr. Ryu fell back in his chair. The ancient ship in the Altair system wasn't just destroying civilizations. It was following a pattern that had happened 12 times before. Every 50 million years, something woke up and decided which species deserved to live. His communication device buzzed. Captain Yoon Silgi's face appeared on the small screen. She was aboard humanity's most advanced stealth ship, the Shadow Walker, somewhere near the ancient vessel. "Dr. Ryu, you need to see this," she whispered. Her face was pale with fear and amazement. "I got close enough to scan the interior of that thing. It's not just a ship. It's like a floating museum." "What do you mean?" Dr. Ryu asked. Captain Yoon sent him the scan data. Dr. Ryu's hands trembled as he opened the files. The ancient vessel was hollow inside, filled with countless chambers. Each chamber contained something that looked like a perfect recreation of a destroyed world. "They're not just killing civilizations," Captain Yoon continued. "They're preserving them. Every species they destroy, they keep a perfect copy inside their ships. Like collecting butterflies in glass cases." Dr. Ryu looked at the crystal records around him with new understanding. "They don't see themselves as destroyers," he whispered. "They think they're gardeners. They believe they're taking care of the galaxy." On his screen, Captain Yoon was moving through the darkness between stars, her stealth ship invisible to normal sensors. "There's something else, Dr. Ryu. The ship isn't empty. There are things moving around inside. I think the original builders are still alive." Suddenly, a new voice filled the communication channel. It spoke in a language that was older than most stars, but somehow Dr. Ryu understood every word. "Children of the third world from the yellow star," the voice said. It sounded tired and ancient, like wind through empty caves. "You watch us work. You do not flee like the others, curious." Captain Yoon's ship systems went crazy with alarms. Somehow the ancient vessel had detected her despite her stealth technology. "Dr. Ryu, I think they're scanning me. I can feel something in my head," the ancient voice continued, now speaking directly to both of them through their communication devices. "You are young. Only 500,000 rotations since you left your birth world. Yet you create weapons that wound us." Also curious, Dr. Ryu realized what had happened. Admiral Song's fleet had actually managed to damage one of the ancient ships. For the first time in millions of years, something had fought back successfully. "We call ourselves the Harbinger," the voice said. "We are the first children of this galaxy. We have tended the garden for 700 million years. We have cleared the weeds 12 times before. This is the 13th clearing. Why?" Dr. Ryu asked, finding his voice. "Why do you destroy entire civilizations?" There was a long pause. Captain Yoon's ship drifted silently in space, somehow frozen in place by the ancient vessel's power. Finally, the Harbinger spoke again. "Life grows wild without guidance. Species spread like infection, consuming resources, making war, creating chaos. Left alone, they destroy the garden and themselves. We prevent this. We clear the weeds and preserve the best examples. The garden stays healthy." "But those civilizations had families," Captain Yoon said, anger creeping into her voice. They had art, music, dreams, love. You erased billions of individual lives. We preserve their essence in our memory banks, the Harbinger replied. They live forever in perfect peace, free from the pain of existence. This is mercy, not murder. Dr. Ryu understood now. The ancient beings had convinced themselves that genocide was gardening. They kept perfect copies of destroyed civilizations like pressed flowers in a book, never realizing that a copy wasn't the same as the real thing. You said we wounded you, Dr. Ryu said carefully. How is that possible? Our technology is nothing compared to yours. Another pause. When the Harbinger spoke again, there was something different in its voice. Something that might have been uncertainty. Your weapons work differently than expected. They attack reality itself, not just matter and energy. We have not encountered such principles before. How did a young species develop such techniques? Dr. Ryu almost smiled. Because we're young. We don't know what's impossible, so we try everything. Captain Yoon's ship was slowly being pulled closer to the ancient vessel. She could see details of its hull now, covered with symbols and patterns that seemed to move when she looked at them directly. Dr. Ryu, I'm seeing more ships. Dozens of them. They're all heading toward populated systems. The Harbinger's voice filled with what sounded like sadness. The garden is more wild than it has ever been. This clearing will be extensive. Most species will not be preserved. They have been contaminated by contact with each other. They have lost their original purity. What about humans? Dr. Ryu asked, though he was afraid of the answer. You are unexpected. You developed alone without guidance from elder species. You retained innovation, creativity, chaos. You are uncontaminated but not pure. We must study you before deciding your fate. Captain Yoon's ship was now close enough to see inside the ancient vessel through transparent sections of its hull. What she saw made her gasp in horror and wonder. Entire worlds existed inside the ship, perfect recreations of destroyed civilizations. But they were empty, beautiful, perfect, and completely dead. They're like museum displays, she whispered to Dr. Ryu. Perfect copies of dead cultures, preserved forever but never truly alive. Dr. Ryu made his decision. He activated the emergency broadcast system, sending his message to every human ship and colony in the galaxy. All human forces, this is Dr. Ryu Taehyun, with critical information. The ancient ships are not invaders. They're gardeners who believe the galaxy belongs to them. They've done this 12 times before every 50 million years. They preserve copies of destroyed civilizations, but the copies are just museum pieces. He paused, looking at the crystal records around him. But they can be hurt. Our weapons work because we developed them differently. We don't know what's impossible, so we made the impossible real. The broadcast reached Admiral Song just as her fleet engaged the ancient vessel in the Altair system. For the first time in the battle, human weapons actually damaged the ancient ship's hull. The Harbinger's voice filled the communication channels across the galaxy, speaking to every species at once. The garden has grown wild beyond all previous cycles. The clearing begins now. Submit for evaluation or be removed entirely. The third world species has proven they can cause pain. This changes nothing. The garden must be tended. But Dr. Ryu was smiling now, even as terror filled his heart. The ancient beings had just admitted something crucial. They could feel pain. They could be surprised. They could doubt themselves. For the first time in 50 million years, the perfect gardeners had encountered something they didn't understand. Humanity had just become the first weed that fought back successfully. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when the impossible became real. General Baek Junyuk stood in the war room deep beneath Seoul, surrounded by screens showing the destruction of the galaxy. Half of all known civilizations had already been erased by the ancient ships. The survivors huddled in hidden systems, sending desperate messages for help that no one could answer. But General Baek was not panicking. He had been preparing for this day for 50 years. Dr. Lim Da-hee, report on Project Lazarus, he said to the small woman standing beside a complex holographic display. Dr. Lim Da-hee looked tired, but excited. Her white hair was messy from working without rest and her eyes burned with the fever of discovery. All quantum weapon platforms are online, General. We have 300 hidden installations throughout human space, each one connected by quantum entanglement. And our ghost fleet? General Baek asked. Commander Nam Ji-hoon stepped forward from the shadows. He was young but moved like a predator, and his eyes held secrets. All 20 ships are ready, sir. We can strike multiple targets simultaneously across the galaxy. General Bayek nodded. While other species had spent millions of years perfecting conventional technology, humanity had developed something different. They had created weapons for fighting gods. Sir, Dr. Limdahi said, pointing to her displays, I've been analyzing the data from Admiral Song's engagement. The ancient ships can be hurt by our quantum dissolution weapons, but only because we approach physics differently than they do. Explain, General Bayek commanded. They understand reality as fixed rules that can be manipulated, Dr. Limdahi said, her hands dancing over the controls. We understand reality as suggestions that can be ignored. Their technology works within the laws of physics. Ours works around them. On the screens around them, another ancient ship appeared near the Zephyrian homeworld, High Counselor Vextar's proud species, who had ruled the galaxy for millions of years, lasted exactly 17 minutes before their entire civilization was deleted from existence. Phase 1 begins now, General Bayek announced. Commander Nam, take your ghost fleet and hit them where they don't expect it. Commander Nam Jihoon smiled coldly. With pleasure, sir. The ghost fleet was humanity's strangest creation. The ships existed in quantum superposition, neither fully real nor fully imaginary, until the moment they chose to attack. They could be everywhere and nowhere at the same time, striking enemies who had no way to defend against attacks that happened before the decision to attack was made. Commander Nam's ship, the Phantom Strike, materialized inside the ancient vessel's shields. For a brief moment, both ships occupied the same space, existing in impossible harmony until reality decided which one was more real. The human ship won. Quantum dissolution torpedoes fired directly into the ancient vessel's core, attacking the very idea that the ship existed. The Harbinger's vessel shuddered as sections of its hull simply stopped being real. Impossible, the ancient voice echoed across space. You attack causality itself. Such weapons cannot exist. Tell that to the holes in your ship, Commander Nam replied, as the Phantom Strike flickered back into normal space. But the real surprise came when Dr. Limdahi activated Project Lazarus. 300 hidden weapon platforms throughout human space came online simultaneously. Each platform was quantum entangled with the others, meaning they all fired at the exact same moment regardless of distance. The ancient ships, scattered across the galaxy, were suddenly hit by coordinated fire from weapons that should not have been able to reach them. The attacks came from multiple dimensions of space-time, striking targets in the past, present, and future simultaneously. For the first time in 700 million years, the Harbinger experienced fear. What are you? It demanded, its voice filled with confusion and rage. You are children. You have existed for less than one rotation of the galactic center. How do you possess weapons that wound eternity itself? General Bayek activated his personal communication with the ancient being. We learn to fight by fighting ourselves. Humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and we spent thousands of years at war with each other. We developed these weapons because we knew that someday we would face enemies we couldn't match with conventional force. The battle spread across multiple dimensions. The ancient ships tried to retreat into higher levels of reality, but the Ghost Fleet followed them there. Human weapons attacked not just matter and energy, but the mathematical concepts that allowed matter and energy to exist. Dr. Limdahi was analyzing the battle in real time, her computers tracking impossible events across space and time. General, I'm detecting something strange. The ancient ships aren't just damaged, they're changing. How so? General Beck asked. The attacks are forcing them to adapt, but they can't adapt without becoming something different than what they've been for millions of years. They're experiencing evolution for the first time in eons. On the main screen, one of the ancient vessels was transforming. Its perfect black hull was developing new patterns, new structures. It was becoming something that had never existed before, shaped by the pressure of human warfare. The Harbinger's voice returned, but now it sounded different. Confused, almost afraid. You are teaching us pain, it said. We had forgotten pain. We had transcended suffering millions of years ago. But your weapons bring back sensation. They force us to feel. Good, General Beck replied coldly. Maybe pain will help you remember what it's like to be alive. Commander Nam Jihoon's Ghost Fleet struck again, appearing inside multiple ancient ships simultaneously. But this time, the ancient beings were ready. They had learned from pain, adapted because of suffering, and become more than they were before. The battle became something beyond normal understanding. Ships fought across multiple timelines. Weapons attacked the past to change the present. Both sides used causality as a weapon, creating paradoxes that reality had to resolve through violence. But humanity had one advantage the ancient beings had forgotten. Humans were used to fighting impossible odds. They had spent their entire history as underdogs, developing tactics for defeating superior enemies. Dr. Lim, General Baek said as the battle raged around them, "Can we force a direct confrontation with their leader?" Dr. Lim Dahi checked her readings. The Harbinger is trying to maintain distance, fighting through intermediaries. But if we can create a quantum tunnel directly to its consciousness, do it, General Baek commanded. Captain Lee Do-yun, who had survived the destruction of 3 different fleets, volunteered for the most dangerous mission in human history. He would link his mind directly with the Harbinger's consciousness, creating a connection that would force the ancient being to experience human emotion, human thought, and human determination. "Sir," Captain Lee said as the quantum tunnel opened around his ship, "if this works, I'll be inside the mind of something that's lived for 700 million years. I might not come back as myself." "I understand, Captain," General Baek replied, "but you might be our only chance to make them understand what they're really doing." Captain Lee's ship disappeared into the quantum tunnel, traveling not through space but through consciousness itself. The last thing General Baek heard from him was a transmission filled with wonder and terror. "I can see it all," Captain Lee whispered. 700 million years of memories, 12 cycles of extinction, the loneliness of being the last of your kind, the fear that drove them to become gardeners instead of gods. The connection was established. For the first time in millions of years, the Harbinger was no longer alone with its perfect, terrible thoughts. The galaxy held its breath as human chaos met ancient order in a battle that would reshape the meaning of existence itself. Captain Lee Do-yun felt his mind expanding beyond anything he had ever imagined possible. Through the quantum link, he was experiencing 700 million years of memories that belonged to the Harbinger. He saw the birth of the galaxy, the first species to achieve consciousness, and the terrible loneliness of being the only intelligent life in an empty universe. But the Harbinger was experiencing something too. For the first time in millions of years, it felt human emotions flowing through its ancient consciousness. Fear, hope, love, anger, curiosity, and above all, the burning desire to grow and change and become something better. "This is overwhelming," the Harbinger's voice whispered inside Lee's mind. "How do you live with such chaos? Such constant change?" Lee showed the ancient being his memories of human history. Wars that taught cooperation, disasters that sparked innovation, failures that led to greater success, love that grew stronger through loss. "We don't fight the chaos," Lee explained. "We use it. We grow because of it, not despite it." The mental connection was affecting both beings. The Harbinger was remembering emotions it had forgotten, while Captain Lee was understanding the terrible burden of perfect knowledge and endless responsibility. "We were the first," the Harbinger said, its thoughts filled with ancient pain. "When we achieved consciousness, we were alone. No parents to guide us, no teachers to show us the way. We had to learn everything ourselves, make every mistake possible." Lee saw the truth in the ancient memories. The Harbinger's species had grown up alone in an empty galaxy. They had made terrible mistakes, fought devastating wars, nearly destroyed themselves countless times. When other species finally evolved, the Harbinger tried to guide them to help them avoid the same mistakes. But guidance became control, Lee realized. Protection became imprisonment. You stopped letting other species make their own mistakes and learn from them. "Yes," the Harbinger admitted. "We became afraid that they would make the same errors we did. So we decided to manage the galaxy like a garden, remove the chaos, control the growth, preserve only the best examples." "But that's not how life works," Lee said gently. "Life needs chaos. It needs mistakes and pain and loss. That's how it learns and grows and becomes something new." Around them, the battle continued to rage. Human ships fought ancient vessels across multiple dimensions of reality. But the real war was happening in the connected minds of a human captain and an alien god. Elder Kim Wonshik, the oldest and wisest human philosopher, had been brought to the command center to help with the mental link. His voice reached both Captain Lee and the Harbinger through the quantum connection. "Honored Ancient One," Elder Kim said with respect, You have tried to be perfect parents to the galaxy, but perfect parents eventually let their children make their own mistakes. The Harbinger's confusion rippled through the connection. But they will make the same errors we did. They will suffer as we suffered. They may destroy themselves as we nearly did. Maybe, Elder Kim agreed. Or maybe they will find solutions we never discovered. Maybe their mistakes will teach them things that perfection never could. Captain Osujin, the youngest officer in the human fleet, was monitoring the connection from her small ship. She was barely 20 years old, full of curiosity and irreverence. Her voice cut through the ancient thoughts like a blade. "You're not gardeners," she said bluntly. "You're just scared parents who never learned to let your kids grow up." The simplicity of the statement hit the Harbinger like a physical blow. 700 million years of philosophy and justification crumbled before the honest words of a young human who had never learned to be afraid of ancient gods. The Harbinger struggled with concepts it had not considered in eons. We did not want them to suffer as we had suffered. But suffering is part of living, Captain O continued. You can't protect someone from life itself. All you can do is love them and hope they learn from their mistakes. Through the quantum link, Captain Lee felt the moment when everything changed. The Harbinger's perfect crystalline thoughts cracked open like an egg, and new possibilities began to grow in the spaces between certainty and doubt. "We have been wrong," the Harbinger said, its voice filled with wonder and terror. "For 12 cycles we have been wrong." The ancient ships throughout the galaxy suddenly stopped their attacks. The collective consciousness that controlled them was experiencing something it had not felt in millions of years. The possibility of being incorrect. "What do we do now?" the Harbinger asked, its thoughts small and uncertain as a child's. "How do we undo 700 million years of mistakes?" "You start by making a choice," Elder Kim Wonshik said gently. "You can continue the cycles, staying perfect and alone forever. Or you can risk being imperfect and join the galaxy as equals instead of gods. But if we are not gardeners, what are we?" Captain Lee smiled through the quantum link. "You're students. Just like the rest of us, the decision split the collective consciousness. Some of the ancient beings chose to return to their sleep, content in their perfect isolation. They would dream forever of the garden they had tended, preserving their flawless memories in crystalline peace. Others chose something more dangerous. They chose to wake up completely, to join the galactic community as teachers and learners instead of gods and gardeners. They would risk being wrong, risk making mistakes, risk changing into something they had never been before. The Harbinger itself chose a third path. It would become a guardian and guide, helping younger species learn from its mistakes while allowing them to make new ones. It would share its vast knowledge without forcing its solutions on others. The preserved civilizations, Captain Lee asked through the link. "What about them?" The Harbinger's sorrow echoed through the connection. "They cannot be truly restored. They are perfect copies, but copies nonetheless. However, their knowledge, their art, their dreams can be shared with the survivors. Death cannot be undone, but memory can be honored." The great ships began to transform. Some became traveling libraries, sharing the preserved knowledge of destroyed civilizations with anyone willing to learn. Others became mobile research stations, working alongside younger species to explore new possibilities. A few chose to seed empty worlds with new life, hoping that different paths might grow from ancient wisdom. The galaxy slowly began to heal. The surviving civilizations, no longer hiding in terror, emerged to help rebuild what had been lost. Humans found themselves welcomed not as junior members, but as the species that had saved everyone by refusing to accept the impossible. High Counselor Vextar was gone, his people erased. But other Zephyrians had survived in hidden colonies, and they approached humanity with something they had never shown before: respect. Commander Kixlan's hive mind had been shattered, but the individual fragments were learning to think for themselves for the first time in millions of years. They thanked the humans for teaching them that chaos and individuality could be strengths instead of weaknesses. Captain Lee Do-Yun returned from the quantum link, changed but still himself. He had touched the mind of a god and found it was just another being trying to do its best in an incomprehensible universe. "What did you learn?" General Beck asked him. "That being right isn't the same as being wise," Captain Lee replied, "and that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone you love is let them make their own mistakes." The ancient warnings were rewritten as lessons instead of prophecies. The galaxy entered a new age where diversity and conflict were recognized as tools for growth, rather than problems to be eliminated. Years later, human ships worked alongside vessels built with ancient technology and crewed by species that had learned to value uncertainty over perfection. They explored beyond their galaxy for the first time, ready to face whatever challenges awaited in the larger universe. And somewhere in the space between stars, the Harbinger dreamed new dreams, no longer alone with the terrible burden of perfect knowledge. It had learned the most important lesson of all, that growing up meant letting go of the need to control everything, even if it meant the people you loved might get hurt. The monsters in the dark had turned out to be frightened parents. The legends had become teachers, and humanity had proven that sometimes the newest voice in the room has the oldest wisdom of all. The galaxy was finally free to make its own mistakes and learn from them, together.